Well, I want to just touch on your summary of the Old Testament law as you were writing. You want to think about the law in both blessings and curses, and how we were delivered from the curse of the law. Remember that the curse, if followed, provided blessing to the nation of Israel. And the law is not just the Ten Commandments. And I think a lot of times we we go right to there. The law was much more than just the ten, though the ten provided the basis for relationship with people and relationship with God. So as you think about the first four, we're very vertical in worship. Don't worship any other gods before me. And then doing harm or doing wrong to one's neighbor make up the last six of the ten. But when you think about the law, we go to Exodus and we see Exodus unfolding for us, the people of God coming out of the land of Egypt and then moving toward the promised land. But they get hung up because of their disobedience, their lack of worship to God, and so they request before Moses that we want to be like every other nation, and we need to know the right and wrong, or how to live within community. And Moses, said, I'm not sure you really know what you're asking, but eventually God does give the law. It gives the standard by which the people of God are to live by, and how they are to exchange in community life. And as you move forward through the Torah, as the Jewish community identifies the first five books of the Pentateuch, we begin to understand more that just Exodus, but also Deuteronomy. And even if you think about Moses as he's writing Genesis, he's unfolding for us really the presentational law. Remember, the law was even written on the hearts of Adam and Eve. They were given a standard: do not eat of the tree. And so that was a law. And, you think about Noah and then eventually Abraham as we move through the narrative of Genesis, that these people were walking with God and God counted them as righteous. And so the question you need to think through biblically is, why did God see them as righteous, and what were they doing? Well, they were walking with God. They knew what was right and what was wrong. And then you fast forward into the book of Deuteronomy, and you begin to then see the premise even open up more about the law, such as the law in chapter 5 all the way through chapter 26. And in chapter 5, we're given the Ten Commandments. In chapter 12, we're giving laws again regarding offerings made at certain places. And then chapter 13, idolatry is forbidden. And Moses is, again, re-engaging with the people to remind them of God's standard in their life. And then chapter 14, you have cutting is forbidden. You have in the same chapter, a summary of what is clean and what is unclean regarding animals, and how and what the people of God are able to eat and not eat. And then chapter 14 again, speaking about tithing, giving back to God a tenth percent of their first fruits. And then chapter 15 again is another summary of how to deal with debt, how to deal with poverty and servants and the first flock. And so the law is then further elaborated as we move together. Chapter 16, you have the Passover and unleavened bread. And chapter 16 also mentions the Feast of Works and the Feast of Tabernacles, the righteous judges that are over the nation. And eventually idolatry is punished. Again, going back to that heart of worship and the command for the people of God to worship God wholly and to be devoted to Him only in both life and in worship. And then, in chapter 17, Moses reveals to us how decisions are made in regards to judgment of hard matters and cases that there's uncertainty about it. And then God calls Moses to write about kings and God's word in over all their lives. And so that's pretty much a summary of how Moses begins to unfold the law in our life, how it is both a blessing and a curse. A blessing, it keeps us connected to God's family. We find our worship when we worship Him in spirit and truth, and as we obey and honor the law. And then if we go outside of the law and the parameters, then we receive His consequences for in our lives, and we have to live by them. So how is the law both a blessing and a curse? Well, the blessing is that when I walk with God, I receive His kindness and His grace in my life. When I go against His law, I receive His consequences, and His anger is kindled toward me, and then I have to repent. And so it is a motivation for us to see the law as a teaching device. And today we should find principles that we can learn from the Old Testament, apply it in our lives, within our churches, within our families. And so I hope that gives you kind of a summary of what you wrote about, and how maybe you could clarify even your own thinking about the law in your ministry.